The content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein, belong to the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the views of Brigham Young University or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
First, let's just dismiss now the Book of Mormon. Remember, it's Moroni's comment on the end, the 9th chapter of Mormon. We've got to wind that up, where he starts in the 36th and the 26th verse, the 9th chapter. You want to be here? Well, turn this thing off. Come on, turn it off. Should find a way. The lie detector. I don't like it. He says, no, he says that, who will rise up against the almighty power of the Lord? Who will despise the works of the Lord? In the 29th verse, notice. Who will despise the children of Christ? Behold, all ye despisers and workers of the Lord, ye wonder and perish. Why that word despise? What does despise mean? Despicio, it means look down upon. Hold as inferior. Hold yourself as above that sort of childish nonsense. That's what despiser. And that's the only way you can reject the word of the Lord. You can't be neutral. You can't laugh it off exactly. And you can't argue with it and get angry. No, just despise it. We don't even consider that stuff. That's for children. That's guff. And that's, I say, the only way you can reject it is to despise it. So that's why he's talking in this way. And then work out your own salvation with fear and trembling before him. This is the great issue, the fearsome decisions we have to make here. Be wise. Notice how personal it is. Work out your own salvation in fear and trembling before him. Be wise, and the opposite of despising is to be wise in the days of your probation. And then he says an interesting thing. Strip yourselves of all uncleanness. Ask not that you may consume it on your lusts, but ask with a firmness unshaken that you will yield to no temptation, but will serve the true and living God. That's an important statement there. What does it mean by consume it on your lusts? Yield to the natural man as far as that goes. What limit is there to justifying behavior as natural? Cannibalism is behavior, you might say natural, but orgies certainly are. Delight in the shedding of blood, rape, all sorts of things that excite people and get great interest in shows, games, and so forth. Those things are perfectly natural. Can you justify them? Because they're natural. They are perfectly natural. You actually have to resist them. There's such a strong natural drive. So he says, ask not that you may consume it, that is, consume your desires, fulfill your life and your wishes on whatever you want to do. If it feels, that's your lust, you see, on your lust. If it feels good, go right ahead. Don't do that, he says. But even though it is a natural temptation, but ask, you have to ask, you have to have support in resisting it. You must have support. Your nature isn't going to be enough to get through with it. You must have support there. Ask with a firmness unshaken that you will yield to no temptation, but serve the true and living God. You don't mitigate daily vices by visits to the confessional or the chapel or the temple or anything like that. Where he says in this next verse, do all things, see that you do all things in worthiness. Your whole life. Well, there's been a lot of talking about that in the conference yesterday, wasn't it, the day before? This very things, do all things in worthiness. I speak to you as though I spake from the dead, but I know that ye shall hear my words. Condemn me not because of mine information. Rather give thanks to God that he hath made manifest unto you our imperfections, that ye may learn to be more wise than we have been. Notice why the Book of Mormon is also taken up with crime and folly and war. It's an account of follies and calamities. It's for our benefit, that you may be wiser. There's a way of avoiding these. He's been talking about first, you don't despise. You take these things seriously. Then you're naturally tempted. Everybody is. He says, resist that. Ask for the Lord to assist you in that, and that will go. And then you can learn from our imperfections. For heaven's sake, don't do the silly things we did. Our follies and calamities, of course, we are doing. And then he ends up saying it's in Reformed Egyptian, language which has changed completely. You see, no other people knoweth our manner of speech. Now we come, there are a lot of problems in the Book of Mormon that should be touched on, but we don't have time for them. So I have gathered some sources and comments here, and I've got another Xerox to inflict on you. This is 8 pages long. It'll cost you around 2 bits, 25 cents for this. It's 8 pages, but we can make up the difference easily enough. But you should have this. It'll help. And I'm going to pass them around right now, and you can keep it if you want. If you bring it, if you want to keep it, You can pay 25 cents or so forth. Now let's set these around here. I don't know whether we'll have enough. We may have enough. We'll set these going here. Oh, like that. Yes, we'll pass them around. Yeah, and because there's some important notes here, this is a spiel I had to give down at Merida in Yucatan 10 years ago, but in the process I gathered a lot of interesting notes which you might find useful. If we run, oh, here's some more that I had from another class. That's right. And we should talk about Brother, while we're handing those out, we can talk about Brother Kimball's thing. You notice what Brother Kimball made 3 points here? We have it. Yeah, we can pass these out too if they're not enough. But we should all note here. He starts out, where do we have this? Yes, let's put it this way. He talks about the marvelous earth we find ourselves on, the dark and threatening clouds. The Lord gave us a choice world and expected us. But, he says, be righteous in obedience to his commandments. That's what we've just been talking about. But when I review the performance of this people in comparison to what is expected, I am appalled and frightened. He starts out that way, and then page 4. Then he talks about 3 things. The first one is, as you'll notice, the deteriorating environment. We've noticed that's become much more serious since. The second is the quest of affluence. That's the next subject you talk about. And the third is our trust in deadly weapons, in military power and military solutions. All these, of course, are fundamental in the Book of Mormon. Even look how far ahead of its time the Book of Mormon was in talking about ecology, the destruction of the forest, the necessary people, use of the cement, and so forth. Well, these things are talked about on this thing that's being handed out now. You all have one of these called the Book of Mormon and the Ruins. Did they get around yet? Where are they at? They're going slow. Who doesn't? Oh boy. Well, we made enough of them. Oh, they're cruising around, but certainly taking their time. I should have distributed them in smaller bundles, shouldn't I? Well, like this one. I do have them here, and that one. Efficiency is not our strong point in this life. No, but read and notice the Book of Mormon quotations, when we quote Mormon and so forth in Brother Kimball's. It may give you some ideas for the paper we're going to ask for. But now this one. Still somebody without these? Oh, they're priceless. Now, wait a minute. Are there enough to go around there? There are not enough? Well, that's odd. I had a huge pile of them. They're still going around up there. 50, 70, 80. This is strange. Well, then, pay attention. Do you have one, Sister Dickersteel? How many don't have them? Oh, that's not bad. Say, you won't miss much. These references are very useful, though. And the first of all is we have the ruins. And this was the thing that challenged Joseph Smith. We'll go through this just fast. And the questions we asked here, well, Mexico is the one place where a student need not apologize for being ignorant and being a tourist. From the first beginning to the present, all who've examined the ruins in the New World, that includes our own brother Ray Mathene, who wrote a cover page article in the National Geographic a short time ago on the excavations we're doing down there. But everyone who examines the ruins of the New World have been nothing but tourists. They view and they wonder and they guess. We'll see why. He starts out. Can anybody account for the ruins here? So there's certain questions, as Peter Tompkins says in his work on the Mexican pyramids, that there are certain questions you must ask yourself. And the first one, what about counting for these ruins? Though we have this was a new book at the time, Aguiano, came out, Mexico Antes de los Aztecas, and the discussions concerning the settlement of America are very far from over. He notices, we underline, there are countless theories circulating about the origin, say, of the Olmecs. The physical appearance is unknown. The great carved heads, you've seen them down La Venta and so forth, these huge heads with the headbands on them and so forth. They're a complete mystery, he says. La Venta is disconcerting by the mystery of the mental process of these strange monuments. What are they doing? The same holds all the way to the old kingdom of Egypt. Nobody has to this day the vaguest idea, all the arguments and theories about pyramids and so forth, but nobody has a real answer to that. So here we are talking about a mysterious world very far removed from our own. That great monument called the King's Stela, who was it? What's it trying to say? The necessary information is missing for venturing even the most minimal speculation. In other words, we don't know a darn thing about the monuments, the most impressive ones. He says, no one knows what became of the Olmecs. From 14,000 years of pre-classical occupation, quote, not a single item of clothing has been found. Now that's interesting, because in Egypt, out at Sela, where BYU was excavating, you can walk for miles, and you can kick up the sand, and you'll kick up bones and pottery and so forth, and cloth, big pieces of cloth, 2,000 and 3,000 and 4,000 years old, in good condition. You'll find on the second level of the Cairo Museum, they're whole garments of cloth from the pre-dynastic times, made out of the most beautiful linen, gorgeous, as good as any linen they could make today. How did those prehistoric people ever find out that you could take a blue flower and make a fine, tough white cloth out of it? But they knew, and it's good as ours. But in the New World, we don't find any. Of course, it's because of the moisture. But out there in the Libyan desert, you dig into a grave or the side of a well, it would be a grave or a passage or something. They're all over the place. And among other things that get in your way, pieces of cloth, some of it rust, some of it fine. And the graves we found, the Christian graves and the pre-Christian graves, were magnificently dressed in cloth that is still brilliant. Some people were wearing 4 and 5 different complete costumes at the same time. That would keep them warm. But what an amazing contrast. We have no cloth here at all. And cloth is one of the big things over there. Why were wheels never used? They had wheels in a very active trade and commerce. You know from their toys that they had toy oxen and animals that move around on wheels. They had their wagons, but they never used them in active trade. Why could that be? Well, you can account for that with the Arabs. They'll never use the wheel. See, they were acquainted with the field for thousands of years. They say, Shaitan fi dulab. Satan is in the wheel. The devil is in the wheel. He makes it go. You see, it's a great mystery to them how a wheel can work. But they will not. I had a very good friend, a Druze, a very learned man, a 32nd degree Mason and so forth. But he was very suspicious about riding in a wheeled vehicle. He walked everywhere. He didn't like it. Well, why do people do it? Why don't we ride buffalo and oxen? You've never seen one of us riding a Cape buffalo or a water buffalo, dangerous things. They'd kill one of us. And you see little skinny kids in Southeast Asia riding them all over the place. See, we have these customs and they stick with us. And so you can't argue about these on the evidence of what's missing in Book of Mormon archaeology, if you can call it that. He says, why were wheels never used for transporting people, merchandise, in a very active trade and commerce? There is no explanation for these things, says Mr. Aguiano. It is a mystery how they were able to perforate hard stone using the stone tools of the time. Well, the hardest and the best and the most perfect stonework in the Egyptians found at a time when they said they didn't have metals. How did they do it then? I mean, the marvelous polished surfaces, cutting these great stones, these great blocks out at the Tura quarry there. And it's most impressive. I mean, it's on a scale you can't conceive of. I'm not talking about the pyramids. I'm talking about thousands of other buildings far under the ground and with superb structure. Doing all this in this hard rock without any tools at all. Something is missing here, you see. But same thing. How and to whom did the idea occur of erecting these prodigious structures? He's talking about more pyramids of Teotihuacan. Nobody knows. Nobody has the least idea, he says. And the same thing applies to Egypt. What a world we live in. Nor has anyone any idea what the stone mosaic faces were for. How they were able to erect an idol so huge that Europeans were unable to tear it down is a mystery. That's the thing where the Egyptians fool us all the time. Our engineers are completely baffled, and a couple of Egyptians will get to something with sticks and a little sand and do a thing that we could never do. It's a marvelous thing. They wanted to raise this gigantic statue of Ramses II up to the second floor of the Cairo Museum. They didn't know how to do it. They brought in Manchester engineers from Manchester, all sorts of tools and machinery and stuff, and they couldn't do it. And they got about half a dozen skinny little Egyptians with a big box. They put some boards around, filled it with sand, and then they started ramming with sticks. And this thing started to move. And in a couple of days, they had it up on the second floor. All it took was a few sticks and a little sand, and our engineers couldn't do it without tearing down the building. So, well, these things are quite surprising. The solution always turns out to be something absurdly simple, but we miss it. It's like the gospel there. Neither the Aztecs of the 16th century nor their predecessors knew anything at all about the people of Teotihuacan. They knew only the ruins of a fabulous city. We get that in the Book of Mormon because of the former inhabitants upon the land. And he's not referring to the Jaredites. They know about Jaredites. But complete deforestation of central Mexico or whatever it was, you see, because of the former inhabitants on the land. We'll get a reference to that here. And various practices of building one expensive structure over another. The reason for this practice is unknown. Build a whole new building over the other one at a particular time. And the ubiquitous geometrical designs, you find them everywhere. Nobody knows for what purpose they were worked out. The oaks and the axe stone, the purpose of these objects, and so on and so on. Up to the present time, the cause for abandoning Monte Alban, the most impressive ruin of them all, next to Teotihuacan, and many other places, has not been determined. Why were they abandoned? The big thing is why it fell, why they disappeared all of a sudden. They didn't leave anything behind. This is the characteristic of the Book of Mormon, swept from the face of the land. No record of them at all. They just go. So far, Zapotec writing has not been deciphered. Regarding Mayan origins, there are theories for every taste. 3 Mayan codices we have, that's all we have, just 3 books, and they're still, he says, a long way from being completely deciphered. That sounds rather discouraging, doesn't it? Then we have recurrent patterns which come throughout the Book of Mormon, and here we have the classic Mayan collapse. Now, Culbert had written at that time when I gave this, had just written this book, the classic Mayan collapse, to explain why the Mayans suddenly collapse, why these various people suddenly just collapse and go. And it was edited at the University of New Mexico, and a number of contributors wrote for it. And Culbert says, we probably never really know and will never really and fully identify the relative significance of the various historical facts, or historical forces, their causes and consequences to everyone's satisfaction, since we are in fact frequently unable to resolve these questions with respect to literate civilizations where we actually have written records of the recent past. Archaeology cannot be expected to succeed in endeavors fraught with even greater problems, much more ancient and no writing. Succeeding fashions will necessarily favor other causes, types of explanation. The chief results will be to provide endless occupation for intellectuals so concerned. They'll go arguing this to the end of time. Egyptology has been busy for 200 years now, and they still haven't agreed on a single thing. There's not one single word, the pronunciation of which we actually know. So here you go, you see. As to the great southern collapse, no solution acceptable to the majority of students has yet appeared. And here's Séjourné's work, Madame Séjourné, in the universe of Quetzalcoatl. Every changing attempt to know the home of the progenitor of the Nahuatl, the culture, that's the Quetzalcoatl people, is irredeemably doomed to failure. We'll never know where these people came from, he says. And Michael Coe, who is the man at Yale, the big wheel in this field, he says, in the Mayan scribe and his world, unhappily, our knowledge of Mesoamerican ethnoastronomy, that word has been garbled here, is abysmal. For this, the majority fault lies with ethnologists and social anthropologists, more involved with lightweight problems, such as acculturation, the things that anthropologists like to do. Oh, they fiddle around or something. While major segments of Mesoamerican mental life perish under their very noses. Well, for 4 years at Claremont, I shared an office with Morris Opler, who was the president of the American Anthropology Association, and that's what he did. They did every Thursday night. Hoyer would come in from UCLA, and we'd have big discussions about things, and they never got any deeper than the most superficial study of, a tribal dance or something like that, and describe it. Remember what Warren Wheeler says about science really applies all the way. Science does not explain. Science only describes. You describe a thing in science, you never explain it. Just like we've mentioned that before. Gravity has never been explained. You just describe its workings. Well, now the argument of origins, what they use so much in trying to attack the Book of Mormon here. Where did these people come from? The answer is nobody knows. That's our page 2 here. And Krickenberg, who's done a lot of on Mexican culture, he says, present evidence is totally inadequate to explain how these advanced cultures rose. Did they rise on the ground there? Where did they come from? Apparently without roots. This is what he says. He said, without any, you can't say, well, it evolved, it's evolution, ocean over thousands of years. No, the primitives are one thing and these people are something else. And the one does not evolve into the other. There's no stage of transition visible at all. Apparently without roots, Without any preparation, the earliest American civilizations appear ready on the scene. In Mesoamerica, the Olmec, in the Andean land, the Chavin. These remarkable phenomena can perhaps only be explained satisfactorily by assuming one or more drives influenced ancient Americans from the outside. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand how primitive conditions, which varied little during 15 to 20,000 years of persistence, could suddenly experience a violent surge of progress, passing through a whole scale of advanced culture to a full-blown civilization. Such a thing is utterly out of the question. Of course, they're migrants. We know there's much more migrating in the ancient world than we ever believed before, but the Book of Mormon tells us that. Such a thing is, well, of course, the Book of Ether, which we come to next, is a prime example of how such a thing can be brought. Such a thing is utterly out of the question in the case of the two oldest American civilizations. All of a sudden, they are simply there, he says. Well, how do you account for that? You see, 10 guesses. Somebody must have brought it, eh? The most obvious thing in the world. Until the present time, he says, the archaic and Olmec antiquities are the oldest remains of the former inhabitants of central southern Mexico. Where do we trace them up? Where do we look for them? In Utah, of all places. Excavations in Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico reveal two higher cultures, the Anasazi, we all know them, and the Hohokam of the Gila River and Salt River and over in Mount Graham Stake over there. They were the basket makers without bow or the tomahawk or pottery. Well, what did they have? The predecessors of the Pueblos, they also occupied northern Mexico from 100 to 500 AD. But it is, of course, completely unthinkable that as these civilizations suddenly emerged to speak out of nothing, so to speak out of nothing, which is what amounts to if one takes the primitive culture forms of the Cochise and the basket makers levels as out of nothing in question. They were the ones. They're Paleolithic, he calls them. There are Paleolithic finds in Oaxaca, Yucatan, Guatemala. The Paleolithic, the oldest form, the most primitive stone forms of all. The trouble with them is they're the latest. They come last. It's the same thing in Egypt, too. You get Achalaean, Chilean, Abyvilian points, all sorts of Kudupang and so forth lying around on the ground. They're the last things to be made. They come at the top of the strait and not at the bottom where they should. Yes?
Any records of a mass extinction, such as all the bones of the Nephites?
In one place? Well, that's an interesting place. You don't find them at all anywhere as far as that goes, unless they've been preserved, even in Asia and so forth. We mentioned that the next time when we get to Ether here, that sort of thing. But he said, what about these Paleolithic findings in Oaxaca, Yucatan, Guatemala? They are very late and belong to a time when the great classical and post-classical cultures of Mesopotamia had long passed away. They don't fit in. It's funny, the oldest, the most primitive forms of artifact are always found in the latest, not always, but usually found in the very latest straight away, after all the rest had gone. Of course, well, we have that too. Now it's very well known that people that anthropologists visit as primitives are just people that have declined from former civilization. They've gone out hiding in the woods. Not only are we completely ignorant of the Olmecs, how the Olmecs got their highly developed technique of working jade, their astonishing skill as sculptors handling enormous stone blocks, and their high art of portraiture, but the greater riddle still remains to be answered. Where does their sophisticated system of writing and calendar reckoning come from? The oldest known in Mesoamerica. So we have a problem. And then Aguiana says, the Aztecs and the Toltecs knew nothing about the people who occupied the land before them. Remember, the Aztecs and Toltecs come later. They come after the time of Christ, 8th and 9th century and so forth. So this is not going to answer the problem. That's not going to answer the question at all. Where were there people before the Nephites? The third item here. Well, there certainly were, according to the Book of Mormon. Latter-day Saints were disturbed when we read that remains much older than the Book of Mormon are found in the continent. Well, of course they are. We assume that everything that's found is either Nephite or Jaredite. But read Helaman 3, 4, and 12, where he says, yes, and they did travel to an exceeding great distance, insomuch that they came to large bodies of water and many rivers. Yea, and even did spread forth into all parts of the land, into whatever parts had not been rendered desolate without timber, because of the many inhabitants who had been before inherited the land. Very interesting thing. There were lots of people there before them. They'd wiped out all the timber, and when they wipe it out, that stays that way. And so we have here, well, we'll read the rest of that. Here we learn how the Nephites pushing up from the south and exceeding great distance. It's more than, notice here, it's more than 1,200, if they were from Guatemala, say, to the Valley of Mexico. In that case, it's more than 1,200 air miles from Guatemala to Mexico City, directly by air. That's a long way to push, you see, if it was that, of course. In a major infiltration, they settled a clearly defined territory. As the Book of Mormon describes it, there was a sea to the north. We should put a map up here, I suppose. A sea to the north. Well, there's a map in here, so you can see that. A sea to the north and south, as well as the east and west, can only be found in one region in the Western Hemisphere. That's Mesoamerica and central Mexico here, where we have it. Yeah, here. You see, the Isthmus of Panama curls back on itself, so that the eastern entrance mouth of the canal is in the Pacific, and the western mouth of the canal is in the Atlantic. It reverses itself, and as it passes, it moves to do that. It has quite a long, 120 miles, goes east and west. And so there's a sea north of it, and a sea south of it, there's a sea east of it, and a sea west of it. And this will only obtain in that particular part. That may be a clue. We're not going to argue Book of Mormon geography. That's certainly so. The expressions referred to the seas were ancient, east and west, and so forth. In the Codex Ramirez, which is published in Mexico City, we are told how the first Montezuma conquered almost from sea to sea, and he ruled to the sea southward and in another direction to the limits of the Great Sea, 300 leagues to the south. So he ruled almost from sea to sea. There are the sea on all sides here, as well as north and south. The central highland of Mexico is described in all early accounts as a land of many waters. That was in the back here. I don't know how it got in, but it might be useful. Many waters and streams here, and of course there was much more water at that time. As you all know, Mexico City was built over the water. And indeed, Edward Sellaire, who wrote the old classic, the old 4-volume classic on early Mexico, he collected more data than anybody else, but it's in the early part of the century, but he did a great work. Sellaire maintains that the name usually translated highlands, Anahuac, really meant land of many waters. Now, the complete deforestation of the land doesn't suit the vast forests of the north, a very serious problem in ancient Mesoamerica, as it is today in Mesoamerica. Those are the jungles that are coming down. And we refer to these statements in Helaman, with the condition of the Valley of Oaxaca in the 5th to 6th century, 5th to 9th century. There we're told, in the Valley of Oaxaca, that overpopulation, quote, created a growing shortage of timber for construction of firewood and for cooking, apparently reaching such an alarming extent that the hills were completely stripped of forest. Now, in the Book of Mormon, they make a rule, remember, that they're not to cut down a single tree. It's so strict. They have denoted the whole thing. Nobody worried about deforestation in Joseph Smith's day. They thought the woods were endless, of course, inexhaustible. I used to say when I was a kid, chopping down all the trees in Oregon, inexhaustible. No, they weren't. They still act as if they were. So the hills were completely stripped of forest. According to W.T. Sanders, among the major causes contributing to the rapid decline and collapse, both in the highlands of Mexico and the Mayan country, was the necessity of bringing more land under cultivation with a corresponding decline in forest products. And so they had to build with cement. It tells us in the Book of Mormon, as we know. Well, in that passage we cited, there's a very interesting, Peter Tompkins quotes Catherwood as saying, the mortar that's used at Labna. Labna is where that beautiful gate is, and there's quite a bit of highway. They show they made ancient highways. That's way up in Yucatan, not down in South America. Labna is a very beautiful gate, and the highway leading to it, a ceremonial gate. But there's lots of concrete used, and it was analyzed. Catherwood found it was the very same mortar that was used, the Putzwalana, which was used by the Romans with such effect, with building with concrete. But there's a more recent study from August 1980, National Geographic, in which it's quoting here. It's by S.J.K. Wilkerson. We haven't got it here. He says, in the use of poured concrete, says the engineer colleague David Hyman, El Tajín builders excelled in a technique remarkably similar to today's. So it wasn't just mortar between bricks or between stones. It was poured concrete. When they say it was cement, it was real cement, which comes as a surprise. It was Roman-type cement, and you can write down here, National Geographic, August 1980, page 216. It was poured concrete, and they excelled the techniques remarkably similar to those today's. So, In addition, the next page tells us expansion of land clearance might have reduced availability of forest resources. Acceleration in high population areas where potential fodder that was gathered for fuel as the expansion of Mayan culture in the late Classic became more costly and less reliable. Instead of reporting spectacular ruins, the new settlers in the land, the Book of Mormon, find only depleted resources, with timber all used up for housing and fuel. Since such forests never returned, the damage could have been exceedingly ancient. You know, the Provo Canyon used to be heavily timbered. Then there was the Great Forest Fire in 1915. Never grew back again. Nothing ever grew back. But so those things are remarkably permanent. The inhabitants had disappeared throughout the entire land, which had once been occupied by a vast population. For the Nephites, they were simply the former inhabitants of the land. The non-committal term and the failure to mention Jaredites, even by way of speculation, make it clear the new pioneers had no idea who those people might have been. See, only that they were been there a long time, long enough to clean out the forest, and also that they had filled the land. They were very numerous. Not Lamanites, for Lamanites were contemporary savages, not a lost civilization, or something else. So the moral is the stumbling block by saying, oh yes, there were people here millennium before. Well, we're going to have a book of Ether for that. And this question about racial, was the Lamanites a single racial stock? Well, we've mentioned that enough to show how mixed up these people were. But here are some interesting quotes anyway. The racial issue is confusing because through the years, this simplistic explanation that you either had to be a Lamanite or a Jaredite, and a Lamanite or a Nephite, and the Jaredites were completely extinct, and that was it. Well, we've always been so simplistic. On the other hand, is the equally naive doctrine that everything that ever came to the Western Hemisphere entered by way of the Bering Strait. That's that one shot, and they still cling to it. That was Hrdlicka, the famous anthropologist who came to Harvard and started working on this, and he devoted his whole life to prove a passage along the Alaska Land Bridge, the Bering Strait, when it's shallow there, and when the ocean goes down, you can cross, and people have. Well, there's no objection to their coming in that way at all. The Hopis call that coming in by the back door. They were aware of the tradition. Those people came down. See, the Athabascans were different people. And so we have here this business of coming in. Well, this theory of the Mongolian extraction and the passing over the Alaska Land Bridge and so forth is in Josiah Priest's American Antiquities. I have an original first edition of this, incidentally. And everybody in Joseph Smith says that's the way. We know that all the Indians, all you have to do is look at the map, and you can see they came over the Bering Strait. That's what they'll tell you in the Geographic or anywhere you're going to read it. It's so neat, but it's simplistic. It's as if nobody else came, and this is why. Iguano says there are among the Indians, Mongoloids, there certainly are. Negroes, there certainly are. Southern European types, many of them. Giants, Semitic types, Mediterranean types, Pygmies, Venezuelan, Brazil. Many anthropologists consider it impossible that all these types should be traced to a single Bering Strait route from Asia. South American skulls and dialects both have a strong oceanic resemblance and indicate a Pacific crossing. That's a quotation from Iguano. The strong skulls and dialects both indicate a strong Pacific crossing. I remember a married couple from Hawaii were having their honeymoon, and they were in Gallup, New Mexico, at a shop that was run by a brother who was from the First Mesa. He lives up on the First Mesa. He's and he has a little curio shop in Gallup, and that's in Palaka. And this couple came in, and they started talking about the curios, talking among themselves, particular language, and he says, I know what you're talking. You don't know what we're talking. He says, yes, it's the same language we have. And he was talking, it's our secret language. He says, we call it Iowa. I said, that's what we call it too. Where did you find it? You are a Hopi, aren't you? No, he says, we're from Hawaii. And they were speaking the Iowa language, which is a private language. But that was, I always say I'll think of his name, and I will in 10 minutes. So the two main native traditions, this is what the famous Edward Salar says, the two main native traditions have the ancestors coming from the sea by east and from west by sea. They all agree that their ancestors came in boats. Well, if they keep saying that, shouldn't we pay some attention to their traditions? No, they crossed the land bridge across Alaska there. Well, and then those favoring the single-shot explanation, the land bridge, of everything, have been significantly silent on the subject of blood types. Now, G.A. Matson, he's a member of the church, and he is the director of the National Blood Bank in St. Louis. So all the types and so forth, all the data passes through his hands. He administers it, of course, but he's aware of all these things, and he's kept careful check on this. We do have a National Blood Bank there, and that's where Brother Matson is. I might put that down. And he finds, well, they find at the blood bank there, the dominant type among the American Indians is type O, though some tribes, like the Blackfeet and he was it's a very simple name. Like the Blackfeet are 100% type A, the Islanders and some of our tribes like Blackfeet and Blood Indians, and as are the Hawaiians. They're also type A. Now, Mongolians, on the other hand, people tell us that Indians are all Mongolians, are almost exclusively type B, and you won't find type B among the Indians, very rare. And if there's anything that's conservative, it is duck lice and blood types. Those things never change through millions of years, they tell us. So this should be pretty well settled. A question of race, if the issue hadn't been carefully avoided. They never mention that blood type business. But you almost never find a blood type B, though there were Mongols came up from the north. There's a mixture there, but the dominant is A, which is the same, incidentally, as the Arabs and Jews, is the type A. I mean, the dominant type of the Indians, yes, is type O. Excuse me, I shouldn't have mentioned that. The same combination of O and A is found in the same proportions among the Arabs and Jews as is found among the Indians. I mean, we're talking about proportions here, roughly, proportions. But the one thing that's missing, of course, is the Mongol type, which is exceedingly rare, the type B. The very difficult name I was trying to remember was Tiwa. Now, that would throw you, wouldn't it? He's a Tiwa, this brother. Palaka was a Tiwa. Very interesting tribe. Remember, I was up there and I said, how many people speak Tiwa? I said, a lot of people speak Tiwa. 150 people speak Tiwa. Well, let's all learn Tiwa, eh? Now, related to the problem of race is that of migration. There, the experts have recently been bold to speculate. And it's been crippled by the doctrine that the first people to come were the only comer. Why can't people come after that? The only objection the Book of Mormon says, the only condition the Book of Mormon lays down to people coming to this continent is that they come with the approval of the Lord, knowledge and approval of the Lord. And that's it. They can come before Lehi or after Lehi. The 10 tribes theory is demonstrably, Agriano says, but nothing would keep people from coming over. We have nothing against Egyptian or Phoenicians or Viking landings, and there's no trace of surviving racial types. In each case, how can we be sure? Many noted that the great ceremonial centers of Mesoamerica. Now, this is interesting. When you see them, what are you reminded of? You're reminded of Southeast Asia. That heavy ornate decoration, the towers, the great detail, the overdressing, and all the rest of it are reminiscent of Angkor Wat, which is the beautiful one there in Burma and Siam, the great temples there, and Khmer civilization of Southeast Asia, as Donald Coe says. Robert Heine Gilder, an Austrian who has spent many years on this particular subject, he calls attention to the oft-stunning resemblances between the exotic remains of Cambodia, India, Mexico, Guatemala. They all look just alike in their way. Impressive number of Chinese elements in Olmec, the tiger cult, the bronzes, the jade carving, and so forth. You'd think you're in China. Contacts must have been by sea, not directly across the Pacific, however, but using the Kuroshio Drift, which follows along the coast. Remember, the shortest distance between Japan and California and the Channel Islands of Santa Barbara is a great circle inside of land all the way. It's the shortest distance. And there are many junks have drifted there. The introductory chapters of Cleland's History of California recounts junks and Chinese coins and fans and things that have been found, bronze handles and like that have been found in the Channel Islands along the California coast, because junks have drifted there. That's the last thing. Richard Halliburton, a sensation writer and sensation seeker of the 30s and 40s, decided to imitate that. He started that in a junk, but his junk was badly built and he was never seen again. He was going to follow that drift to California. The people were all waiting, but the ship never came in. Oh, long, long may the ladies sit with their fans into the hand before they see Sir Patrick Spence come sailing to the land. Well, not him. But the But there is something seriously wrong here, for the whole Southeast Asia complex doesn't arise until the 9th and 10th centuries after Christ. Well, we're way off on our schedule here. It's supposed to come from them, and yet they're much, much later than these. So how do we account for that? They could not have been inspired by cult centers built 1,000 years earlier. The only explanation, he says, is to look for a common source. Where do you find it? In the Near East. They both get their ideas from the Near East at a much earlier time. It is there, according to Hugh Nibley, that we must find the originals, both of American and the East Asiatic forms. That's why they look alike. They had common origins. And that happens to be where the Book of Mormon people came from. We left out the word where. No, that happens to be where. Right where. But if the people came from Asia, there's a puzzling lack of cultivated plants and domestic animals in the Old World. In the New World, as well as an absence of the latter, we don't find in the New World the plow, the potter's wheel, the bellows, glass, iron, stringed instruments, and the true arch. We don't find any of those, as well as certain cultivated plants and so forth. Well, Hugh Nibley said that accounts for the nature of the migration that was made. It was a small group of religious people seeking religious asylum, apparently, which is what Lehi's group were, you see. It wasn't people bringing a whole culture with them in mass migration. This is more than outbalanced by the more important cultural items, such as political patterns, which you can bring with you in your baggage if just one family. Cosmology, art, religion, symbolism, ceremonial, architecture, and so forth, which are far too much alike in the two hemispheres to be explained by the recent far-fetched theory of conversion. Now, the point is here, we don't have certain things at all, and yet these other things, which are even more fundamental because they're mental property, intellectual good, they're here, and they're here full-blown. The solution is the type of migration indicated. The people who crossed the sea were not artisans or technicians, they knew a lot about it there, but cultivated folk of religious and intellectual, he says, priestly persuasion. Well, that's Lehi's family right down to the ground, and the people that went with him. What is indicated, according to Hugh Nibley, is carefully planned and prepared undertakings primarily with missionary goals. Well, look at Alma and look at Nephi. He thinks of himself, he leaves his pious community. That's what they're doing. They're spreading the gospel, and they're not to natives in the land, as I said, but among themselves. And that's they go out into the desert just like the people at Qumran in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They go out to live a proper religious life and expect the coming of the Messiah, to live the plan of salvation as the Lord laid it down for us. That's what they're doing here. Not necessarily missionary goals, but religious goals, to set up their own community of saints. Then why not trace, there's a misprint, then why not trace, that is right. Then why no trace of Southeast Asiatic religious teachings in America? Why no Hinduism and Buddhism? The answer, again, is to look to the Near East, where the Spanish priests and Puritan divines instantly detected so many resemblances to the Old Testament all over the place. And things were very different when they first came here. Things had a different appearance. Judging today, you'd never guess it, but everyone was so enormously impressed by these are just people living just like the Jews and so forth. They even thought they spoke Hebrew. And these parallels, of course, they were conditioned to see that. But nevertheless, you read a book like Boudinot's Star in the West, written in 1820, and you'll see how much these resemblances, how people like Washington, Jefferson, Franklin were absolutely convinced that the Indians were of Hebrew descent. Joseph Smith could have got it from there, right? But then the problem would be to write it up. Well, we give some examples here from the Mississippi Valley. Holmes collected extensive parallels from Mississippi Valley to Mexico and Mesoamerica. He showed at the time of the conquistadores, there was a massive movement of tribes from the north to southern United States. They're moving again, just as in the Book of Mormon, that massive movement toward the north and east. The Cherokee came from Lake Erie, for example. And the platforms of the Mississippi Valley are right out of Mexico. Well, for that matter, you visit the best city to see it in, I guess, best town to see it in, would be Hotavilla, where you have 5 kivas that are built just on the model of Mexican temples, as far as that goes, those towers. Well, we have to hurry on here. And whether they're migrating too far, here's this map. It's given here. What he tells us here, a superficial concept of distance reinforced by a false perception of present-day boundaries. We're quoting here of the Americans as one of the most things, perhaps most popular. What he's showing is that the distance from one end of the Inca Empire, which runs all through the Andes, and which the Incas made a daily milk run with goods and military. They would send military inspections, troops every day from one end to the other. They wouldn't take more than a day. But the length of that Inca Empire is greater than by far than the distance from Mexico City to New York. It's by far greater, and they did it regularly. It was a regular run, you see. But here he takes it as far as from Colombia to New York, and it goes through Yucatan and all these others. But of course, that's a longer way around. But it's the same, you see. It's the same air distance. It's even shorter. As the question, they couldn't negotiate those great distances. They couldn't go that far. Well, the moral teaching is the most important here. Now, this is what happened. People often ask, where are the great heaps of evidence that would confirm the Book of Mormon? And as Bullard says here in Culbert's book, the old classical culture with its social controls was completely sundered and swept away. That's a favorite expression in the Book of Mormon. You see, they shall be swept away as soon as they are ripe in iniquity. They shall be swept from the face of the land. Post-classic is a new chapter, indeed, if not indeed a new book. The fabulous cities were totally and finally abandoned, you see. Not only the Maya country, but the Atlantic coast, Oaxaca, and central highlands of Mexico were all deserted at once. There's an astounding thing to tell us. Ether says, whoso should possess this land should serve him the true and only God, or they should be swept off. And it is not until the fullness of iniquity among the children of the land that they are swept off. How do the horrendous successes indicated? Some of the paintings and carvings match with the Book of Mormon. We have them. Well, the fullness of iniquity it describes. This takes us to the dark side of early American civilizations. Rites and ceremonies employed by the Indians of New Spain, a 16th century Spanish description, which is quite terrifying so far. They had become strong in their perversions. They were alike brutal, sparing none, quoting Moroni here. The Book of Mormon says they had perverted the right ways of the Lord. They had the religion, see, they had ceremonies, but they perverted them to this extreme extent. And this, we mentioned this before. Here we have Quetzalcoatl, the great prophet and savior, departing with a promise to return. The other was the cult traced to the time of King Waymak, at which time the people turned to war and human sacrifice. We've seen that. The evil has two aspects in the Book of Mormon: a general corruption, licentiousness, with frequent mention of delight in the shedding of blood, and the other is the domination of secret societies with their oaths, signs, insignia, and so forth. These last are very much in evidence in post-classical art. This is what did it, you see. For example, the vast display of overwhelming symbolism, especially the lion or jaguar, the eagle and snake motifs, they are society members. They are various clans which subject everybody to terror, and these still exist among certain Indians. In the Book of Mormon, the ubiquitous eagle, lion, and snake motifs are only hinted at, but in the correct context. When Nephi tells people how upon the wings of the Spirit hath my body been carried away upon exceeding high mountain, my eyes have beheld great things, yea, even too great for man, therefore I was bidden that I should not write them. It was not permissible. He was therefore bidden that I should not write them. He comes as near as permissible to hinting at the sort of thing that was perverted. Well, there's a parallel here, beginning on page 7. After all, the purpose of his study was to say, why did this all collapse? And then you see, over-successful, overstrained, and probably overbearing, Tikal would have been at the mercy of ecological, social, and political catastrophes. They obtain many riches. They are lifted up in the pride of their hearts. God condemneth you, and if you persist, his judgment must speedily come upon you. See, there's the Book of Mormon speaking the same language. As civilization becomes more complex, it becomes more vulnerable. As we discover to our increasing horror in recent years, the problem of maintaining unity increases geometrically. We're told the rise of population density here, militarism, a shift from egalitarianism to rank stratified society. See, on the left side, in the Book of Mormon side, many merchants, many lawyers, many officers distinguished by ranks, broken up. Notice, maintenance of unity increases geometrically. The rise of population density. There began to be a war between the Nephites. The people became as numerous as the sands of the sea, and there began to be a war between the Nephites and Lamanites. And notice he says, militarism, a shift from an egalitarian to a ranked and stratified society. Said, well, the Book of Mormon says there were many officers and people began to be distinguished by ranks, and thus there began to be a great inequality, insomuch that the church began to be broken up. And so it goes. All of these are matched here. Increasing distance between the peasant and noble. And thus, says Alma, we see how great the equality of man is because of sin and transgression. Will ye persist in supposing this ye are better one than another? And then migration. Peasant dissatisfaction permitted the breakdown of political system. They got more than they could take, and they would simply migrate. And Alma says, we who are despised, I shall stir up to insurrection. I do not carry power authority. And so we go on these parallels. You may check them and find them very instructive. Rivalry over trade, commercial war. And we had free intercourse to buy and sell. But to get gain, they began to commit secret murders and to rob and plunder. It worked fine, but at the top of page 8 here. Then a general summary. A sharp differentiation, a class of bureaucrats, craft specialists, integrated and elite level. Signs of regionalism, fighting among cities and intercities. Helaman says, there were wars throughout all the land among all the people of Nephi, and there's great swellings and envyings and strife and malice and persecution and murder. All these things, this is the way this book accounts. All these people, they sum it up. This is what accounts for the dispersion of these people, and it's exactly what the Book of Mormon says happened, right down the line at every point. We don't have time to analyze this. We'll try to get to the... So if you have 2 bits, if you don't bring it back, and that's fine, we can use them again. Hi.
I'm interested in how do we explain...
Wait a minute. I'll give it to you. Just a second.
That's okay.
There you are.
Copy, so.
There you are. Oh, you got 2 copies, so that's fine. Good, good. Take your change. You get 2 bits
I'm
on.
interested in how they explain the archaeological evidence is found in the Upper Pleistocene, dates 11,500 years ago in Alaska. The tools they found.
Nothing wrong with that. There were people here before. Remember, the principle of the gospel is multiple use of the earth. There are creatures and worlds and civilizations we know not of. They have a perfect right to exist, you see. Okay. We don't meddle with them, they don't meddle with us. We're told a great deal about them. Well, we're not told, but we're told that they do exist as far as... Oh, yes, that's what I'm going to talk about next time.
Okay.
Because here we take the Jaredites. They have nothing to do with the Book of Mormon. There's a big block of people way back there in Central Asia in the early days. What are they doing in the Book of Mormon? That's what we're going to mention next time. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we going to do the essay for the end of the...
We're sure going to do an essay. We sure are.
The topics?
Well, I should be giving it to you next week.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Do you have any other copies?
You may take all the copies you want. Oh, you can't get another one? Well, here's one, yes.
You have another one.
Yes, I do have another one here. I have a couple left. No, do I? That's all smeared up. That's the false gods. That's the other one. Oh dear, I'm afraid. Maybe out of them here. I guess that's all. I didn't think we'd get rid of all of them.
Could you bring a few more next time?
Somebody may. Yes.
I didn't get one either, and I know there's
I thought
4 or 5 that did.
Well, that's why I thought, well, we didn't get rid of them. Well, I have some made right now, yes.
That'd be great.
I thought I had too many made. And, well, there we are.
Oh, I'd appreciate it anyway.
Well, fine. That's fine. I'll do it.
Should we sign that roll, or do you care?
Well, check it. Check it. Oh, it'll make a great difference.
Oh, yeah.
The roof will collapse if you don't. Just make a mark there with a
We'll
pencil.
sign it.
Is there going to be a final and the essay, or is that...
No, there's going to be the essay. The essay will be a final. You'll have a chance to exercise your wits all the way.
Is this one a quarter?
Well, this is the line for today.
For today?
Yeah, that's for... There you are. See?
I'll come next time, too, then. Sure.
Thank you.
This is 25 cents also?
No, that's 20 cents. So take a nickel back for that.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
I got $5. 1, 2,
When you were absent, your substitute teacher billed the paper. What percentage of...
Oh, I think I have them. I may use them as far as that. It won't count for any percentage, you know. Just for fun. Look, if you don't have fun, forget it. That doesn't sound like very...
How you doing?
I'm all right.
I brought these books to sign.
Oh, I see. Well, sure, I can do it on the spot. Yes. A little blood,
All your money changers.
a little water clears us of this deed, yes. Look, here I am, eagerly gathering quarters.
That beneath the new Black General Authority.
Yeah, wasn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Hey,
Elder Martinez.
I'm sure we gave out more than that. They got about 25 quarters here, and they gave out 8 of them. But that's all right, because we cheated them the last time. We got more money than they, but they did. I don't know how we ended out $4 over. To be a banker. I'm going to be
The series is going to be a book of...
congressional investigation.
There's going to be 20 volumes, is that right?
What?
On this?
Oh, heaven's sake, don't think of that. I'm all just worried about the thing I'm on now. If I can get that one out, I'll be happy to conk out and leave the scene.
Do they have
Cut the scene.
Do they have you proof these, or as you
No, I never get to look at them. They could put anything they want in those things.
Say that it's
Oh, wait, I got to put this in another pocket. There.
Are some of these based on your class notes?
These?
Some of these?
Oh, heavens no.
And like one of them on the early Christianity and Mormonism.
Oh, I may have had some reference to them. That was years and years ago. Some of these are 40 years old, you know. This is ridiculous. Oh, boy, look at that.
Look at that. Your royalty checks.
You mean I have to think about write a new sonnet for each one of these?
No, one would be good. You sign the others.
Okay. Well, should I put your name in it?
Yeah, in the one.
Oh, in the one. You want this one here? All right, then. Well, that's good, isn't it?
That's John Hardy.
This is April. April 3rd, isn't it? No,
April 2nd.
it's the 2nd. I have to go up to Salt Lake tomorrow. Boy, just remembered. I can't believe it's 90. No, I can't believe it's 90. My gosh. Well, you're not Brother Hardiman.
Yeah, John Hardy.
Hardy, oh, because Brother Hardiman was another one who brings an awful lot of books around for me. That's
Is that right?
Brother Hardiman, yes. He lives in American Fork. Yes.
I enjoyed the story there at a Christian prayer circle.
Yes, that has made quite an impression with some of the temple people. I'll get you over that. Gee, conference is a strenuous time. People keep coming in from all over. Now I write my name in all these, right?
Yeah.
Close your write your name. Let me see. I-O-U. See, you can put anything above it you want. You could really commit me here.
Hereby assign all your
I'll leave
assets.
out my middle initial. Well, I'll put it in once in a while. I'll put it in like this. I've never written that before.
Winder,
Winder, yeah. Sister Winder.
relative.
No, that's another story. In the Army, I was NMI, no middle initial. A different hand each time makes it suspicious. See, they'll say this is a fake.
Yeah,
you see.
that's I enjoyed in this, I was thumbing through this one, the account of Adam and the adversary hit him in the side.
Oh yes.
And that being
Oh, that's.
indicative of the Savior would have this experience.
Oh yes, all sorts of things in this. Boy, this is full of stuff.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yep, that's right.
What did that last one say?
Scripture, he wrote it. It's Latin. Scripture. Oh, we got that.
All right, thank you.
Well, that didn't hurt very much. On the way.
Hopefully you'll
I didn't think I'd ever get rid of all those things today, but nobody handed them back. I thought they'd all be handed back. 'Cause who wants? Yeah, let's spend a quarter. Oh, here we are.
You don't have any of those numbers extra, do you?
I'll have tomorrow. Yes, I mean next time. Oh, no.
Thanks. When are you going to do the one related to the Song of Redeeming? Is that going to be out of the way?
No, that's coming out on the inside, but that one left out. I'm glad because I have so much more stuff in it that I can use. Yeah.
So you, it's possible to get a copy of it. Did they capture that in the draft?
I don't know this dough. I feel good as carrying it away. Well, I'll see you the next time, eh?
All right.